Left 4 Dead is one of the most enjoyed zombie shooters of all time. Developed and published by Valve, both games follow a group of 4 survivals traveling through various locations and fighting off hordes of infected zombies in hopes of survival. A very basic premise at its core, however, the lore is far from it. Today we will be exploring the story of the 8 main survivors, Sita, the Green Flu, and the military. I'll also be taking some lore from the Sacrifice comics, as this is the only direct storytelling we get, but a majority of the information can be found or pieced together through in-game dialogue or exploration. As usual, Valve doesn't give complete exposition of everything in their games, which makes discovering some of the nightmare that is the Left 4 Dead universe more interesting. I will be excluding The Last Stand due to it being a what-if campaign. We'll be focusing on the canonical timeline for this video. Most gamers probably missed a lot of these details, as most people that I know personally load up the game, sign on the verses, and just turn their brains off. And honestly, I don't blame them. The game is amazing. Finally, I do have to add in, there are spoilers. Now let's begin. Alright, before we begin, I do want to give a basic description of the series' main antagonist, the Green Flu. The Green Flu first appeared in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is unclear whether the virus originated from animals, a biological weapon, or just a simple virus mutation. CETA, the universe's combination of Center of Disease Control and Federal Emergency Management Agency, publicly stated that the source of the virus was from livestock. Farmers began to test their livestock for the sickness, similar to how they would test them for rabies, but this proved futile with how quickly the sickness spread. It is likely that patient 0 was transported to Mercy Hospital for treatment. He exhibited rabies-like symptoms and was very violent towards hospital staff. This was quickly reported to CETA, who advised the public that the sickness is similar to the influenza, and to not panic. Based on the information gathered at the hospital and the short-term research CETA and the military were able to do, the pathogen continues to evolve per host it infects, making the development of a vaccine difficult. It took 2 days from the initial infection in Philadelphia for the virus to spiral out of control. CETA attempted to implement safety measures like wearing face masks and social distancing, but it was to no avail. The exact transmission of the virus is not completely understood, as it was believed that it could be from bodily fluids or simply inhabiting the same space as someone who is infected. This is supported by the hazmat suits worn by the CETA zombies in the Dead Center campaign, or the security guard Zoe comes into physical contact with in Millhaven. We'll touch on these a little more later. Once infected, the patient rapidly deteriorates into a violent state. They do not appear to feast on human flesh as a typical zombie would, but rather attack them and each other. These are referred to as the common infected. There are many different variations of the infected, and they appear to be highly influenced by their environment, and their state of mind, and their physical state at the time of infection. For instance, some of the uncommon infected you will find, like the Mudmen in the Swamp Fever campaign, exhibit special traits that other infected do not. How these traits develop is not entirely clear, as due to the timeline of when the infection first was detected to the time that we pick up the story, there has not been enough time for CETA or the military to pinpoint what causes these mutations, which leaves them up to the player's interpretation. The game begins in the streets of Fairfield, Pennsylvania, with our survivors Lewis, Zoe, Francis, and Bill. How this group has come together is unclear, and honestly, it doesn't really matter. It has been less than a week since the Green Flu epidemic spiraled out of control, and our survivors are still adjusting to their new environment. They are traveling through alleyways where Bill discovers a foul green substance. He brushes it onto Francis's jacket, where Francis remarks,
"Damn it, Bill! Oh, it stinks!"
Zoe and Bill investigate the sound of a crying woman inside of a building. Zoe approaches the woman with compassion, offering assistance, and with the flash of lightning, Bill quickly picks up on something that is not entirely right with the woman and forces Zoe away. During this, Lewis and Francis have been standing guard outside the building, and it appears that something has attracted the attention of a horde. In a panic, Lewis barges into the room and alarms the others of the incoming threat. This alarms the woman, who is revealed to be an infected. Zoe and Bill and escape the room. The infected woman, now named a witch, attempts to break through the door. Lewis quickly puts an end to her and joins the others in fighting back the horde. During the chaos, Lewis spots a helicopter in the air with a searchlight. It appears to be looking for survivors, and with this new beacon of hope, Lewis chases it into the streets, calling for its attention.
Damn it!
It appears the pilot missed his plight, but it did attract the attention of a hooded individual. It pounces on Lewis from the top of a building, landing on him and tearing into him with his razor-sharp claws. Zoe, who was right behind him, quickly catches up and attacks the infected, killing it and defending Lewis. However, the infected is shot onto a car, triggering a car alarm and attracting another horde and a new threat. A largely muscular infected who punches and launches vehicles in their direction. Initially stunned, the crew make the decision to run instead of fighting it. Finding an alleyway with a fire escape, they each climb, narrowly escaping the nickname Tank from killing them. The tank pulls the fire escape onto itself as he tries to chase them, crushing itself. Our survivors regroup, taking a short breather when they hear a distant voice call over an intercom.
To anyone who can hear this, proceed to Mercy Hospital for evacuation. Repeat, proceed to Mercy Hospital for evacuation.
We can take the subway tunnels to the hospital. There's a red line station not far from here.
Bill recommends the crew take a shortcut through the subway station to get to the hospital, and they agree. Before entering, you can see Mercy Hospital in the distance, standing out amongst the lifeless sky as a beacon of hope. The survivors maneuver through the subway station, seeing signs from previous survivors who contemplate between hope and certain doom. Some advise the Mercy Hospital being an evacuation point, while others believe everyone is doomed. Once back to the surface, the survivors find their way blocked. They must proceed through the Hirsch shipping building, where they encounter additional common and special infected. Fighting through the back door, they discover a sewage treatment facility, opening a manhole and venturing into the sewers below. Surprisingly, you can find zombies in the sewers. The survivors follow the sewers until they arrive at a manhole point outside of Mercy Hospital. However, they aren't exactly met with the open arms they were hoping for. A sign on the door indicates the evacuation center is closed, and many deceased bodies are discovered at the door, likely all infected individuals. However, the helicopter pilot is still in the area and urges them to make it to the roof. Upon entry, the survivors discover the entire hospital is overrun. It's completely infested with zombies with not a single survivor in sight. While exploring, you can find a room with a man face down on a table with caution tape on the door. It is theorized this was the first confirmed green flu patient in the hospital, or patient 0. The survivors make their way through the hospital to an unfinished level under the roof. After navigating through more hordes, unfinished drywall and framing, the crew finds an access ladder that takes them to the roof. They discover a radio where they call for the helicopter pilot.
Pick up Mercy Hospital. You made it. All you need to do is hold out until I get there. But first, you need to prepare. There should be a mounted gun and other supplies to help you hold out. No way I can land unless you are ready. Call me back once you're prepared. News Chopper 5 out. Okay, I am on my way. ETA 15 minutes. Just hang in there. News Chopper 5 out.
They set up a defensive position and wait. Hordes of common and special infected attack their position, but eventually the pilot reaches them, and they are lifted from Mercy Hospital to fight another day. The second and shortest campaign of the game, this takes place after the survivors are picked up from Mercy Hospital. During the flight, the helicopter pilot showed signs of the infection and quickly turned, attacking our group of survivors, forcing Zoe to shoot him. They attempt to land the helicopter and have a relatively safe crash landing in Whitney County, an industrial town just outside of Fairfield. The survivors encounter more infected here. However, they find a lead that there is a CETA evacuation site at Riverside First Church. Walking there is almost certain death. However, with a stroke of luck, they discover a mechanic's garage where it appears whoever worked there or lived there was working on a side project, a bus that had been modified to be nearly unstoppable, outfitted with reinforced steel, barbed wire, and loopholes. They managed to get it off its lift, refuel it, and drive away. The third campaign picking up at the city entrance of Riverside. Continuing from the information they gather in Whitney County, the survivors look for the evacuation site. They abandon their car due to a collapsed bridge. They go under the bridge and climb up an emergency ladder and find the tunnel they were heading towards has a massive jam. Abandoned cars, rebels, and zombies block their route, and are forced to detour into another sewer. The sewer leads them to an abandoned safe room, and they discover signs of prior survivors due to the trash and sleeping bags. They continue on through the sewers until they arrive at a raised maintenance bridge. Lowering it triggers an alarm, drawing hordes to them once again. They continue fighting through the zombies until they arrive above ground. They find another safe room located inside of a train depot. prior survivors describe their accounts with the infected. It is important to note by this point it has been a little over a week since the green flu has been declared, and many of the writings that you will see in these safe rooms are people describing what they had saw and their interpretations of the zombies that they're encountering. By this point, our group is within walking distance of the church. Fighting through the usual obstacles, they aren't exactly greeted to what they were expecting. Instead of fighting CETA, survivors, or the military, they are met with more infected and an ominous warning. Once you get into the church, the bell rings, triggering a large horde of zombies. There is one survivor inside of the safe room, though he appears to be not in great condition. Once the door opens, he will emerge as a special infected. His attacker is presumed to be the other infected you find in the safe room. Once again at square one, the survivors continue through the town of Riverside. Staying in the church would be a death sentence. They find no signs of other survivors or any help as they navigate. The skies appear to be as dark as their future, or so they thought. They discover another safe house in town, and prior survivors describe nearby military outposts, encouraging to follow the train tracks. As they continue to trek on, they find a Riverside home. Inside, they find a radio and attempt to call out to this response. They defend their position until John arrives. This campaign starts with the survivors on a rooftop, where they see a plane flying overhead. The crew begins to make their way through Newsburg, the alternate version of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They traverse through the abandoned rooftops, office buildings, and streets. Along the way, the survivors can view and comment on some of the graffiti left behind by previous inhabitants. Conspiracies of there being a cure reserved for the rich, people believing the survivors are the real monsters, the infected is a divine punishment, and some just miss the internet. They eventually make it to the airport, which has been heavily damaged by infected and prior survivors. They witness a plane crash, and their odds of survival are not looking too good. However, once they get down to the runway, there is an active military airplane. It is not taken off yet, and the survivors can interact with the pilot. They begin to fuel the plane, however due to the noise it triggers the horde. After holding out against waves of infected, the plane eventually has enough fuel to take off. The survivors load into the back, and they live to fight another day. Blood Harvest picks up shortly after the survivors are dropped off near the Allegheny National Forest. They follow the previously mentioned series of train tracks that lead them to a barricaded farmhouse. However, instead of being greeted by the military, the place is abandoned. While looking for supplies, they encounter a working radio with an automated message. One of the survivors can interact with the radio and receive this response.
This is an emergency broadcast from the American Safety Zone. Please respond.
Ammo here!
Hello?
Jesus Christ. Captain, we got somebody alive out there. We read you loud and clear, survivors. Here's briefing and instruction team. Prepare yourselves and radio back when you're ready. Please advise when ready.
And we good to go whenever you are.
Roger that, survivors. We're on our way.
After a few minutes, an armored military vehicle will arrive at the farmhouse. The survivors rush to safety, however, they aren't met with open arms. Around this point is the beginning of the Dead Center campaign in Left 4 Dead 2. However, for clarity, I'm going to continue to the Sacrifice. Following Blood Harvest, 4 comic books were released that give insight into the events leading up to the Sacrifice campaign. These are titled Lois, Zoe, Francis, and Bill. It begins with a recap of the farmhouse finale. The survivors narrowly escape death onto the military vehicle. Lewis thanks the driver and tries to make conversation with him, but he is less than polite, closing the sliding door in his face. Lewis and Francis have a battle of the minds once again, arguing over if the cup is half empty or half full. During this conversation, we get a glimpse into Lewis's past. 2 days after the infection, Lewis is shown in the office of the Franklin Brothers IT department. He's on the phone with his coworker Ray, who he is urging to come into the office to work. Ray is quite hesitant, explaining his concerns over the spreading infection. Lewis attempts to reassure him, but Ray disagrees, adamant the only outcome to coming outside is to become infected, and hangs up on him. Lewis then goes into the bathroom, greeting another coworker already inside before going into a stall. While inside, Lewis hears someone knocking on his stall door. He announces himself, but the bangs continue until a pool of blood forms at the bottom of the door. In horror, Lewis stands on the toilet and attempts to look over. but sees no one there. Suddenly, he is attacked from behind. He struggles to fight the individual off, having to resort to beating them to death with the toilet paper holder. He exits the bathroom traumatized by the event and sits at a broken window. Next to him is a deceased zombie, likely the result of someone else in the office who had been attacked. He sees the zombie as a chunk missing from his arm and now notices he was also bitten by his attacker in the bathroom. Likely believing that he was now infected, he takes a seat, gazing upon the chaos outside. We return to the present. The armored vehicle arrives at Millhaven. The driver announces their arrival. Captain Mora advises there are 4 Tango mics on board and advises that he needs to debrief the major on the situation. The crew, understandably exhausted, are awoken at gunpoint in order to drop their weapons and exit the vehicle. Francis antagonizes the soldiers, leading to them knocking him out. The others carry him inside, and Zoe asks the soldiers where they are taking them. He replies, to testing. We take a small flashback to 2 days prior. Lieutenant Moira and Sergeant Downey are discussing their current situation. They have not received any communications from their commanders in 6 days and from any survivors in 10. Moira believes their command has perished from the infection and that Millhaven is on their own. Moira also explains he believes the survivors they are housing in the facility are subhuman. They debate whether to arm them and send them out to fight the infected or to execute them, essentially giving them an instant or extended death sentence. However, during their conversation, they are disrupted by the survivors at the farmhouse. Moira explains he will go out himself to see the extent of the infection, advising their radio hand to let the survivors know they are on their way. Back to the present, we find Francis and Lois in a cell. Francis finally wakes up from being knocked out and goes to antagonizing Lewis. Lewis mostly ignores him but gives an update on their situation. Francis comes up with an escape plan. He does not disclose to Lewis what the plan is, even to Lewis's protest to not do anything. He walks up to the cell door and attempts to goad the guards, but it quickly fails as they cannot hear him. The door is vacuum sealed, and the guards can choose to mute the inhabitants inside. After Francis sulks back to his bed, the survivors call over the smart one. Francis teases they must be talking about him, but of course Lewis comes over. They question him on if the infected have been mutating, and Lewis begins to describe the boomers, tanks, hunters, and smokers. Now we catch back up to Lieutenant Mora. He is informing Major Everly of what transpired on the rescue mission. However, Everly believes the mutated infected are all made up, appearing offended by his supposed make-believe infected. He also stated he's aware of Mora's opinions of the survivors they are housing and advises any continued disobedience will have consequences. Mora leaves the room and begins to plan a mutiny. We jump to Zoe and Bill in the testing room. A doctor instructs Zoe to spit in a petri dish. She is initially resistant, believing this is a waste of time. However, a soldier urges her to do it at gunpoint. She eventually complies. The doctor asks to see her wounds and she protests again. The soldier now forces her sleeve down, showing a healed bite wound. Bill distracts the soldier, allowing Zoe to bash him with his own gun. The soldier initially freaks out due to his mask being knocked partially from his face. This confuses Zoe and Bill. Another soldier comes into the room and escorts him out. The doctor explains that our survivors are carriers. They are immune to the sickness, however they are carrying the virus inside them. They have been unknowingly spreading the disease to any survivors they encounter. This would explain how the helicopter pilot and boat pilots turned after rescuing them. This also explains why Lewis and Zoe were bitten but did not turn. The doctor also reveals he is the only reason the army hasn't killed them, and they're the only reason the army hasn't killed him. They believe he can make a cure from the carriers they bring to him. However, after 2 weeks, it has been difficult to come up with anything. The virus sometimes is transmitted by bites, sometimes by air, sometimes by bodily fluids, making it impossible to create a cure for a pathogen that has no transparent mean of transmission. He also explains that the immunity is passed down through the father's genes, and this causes a flashback to Zoe's past. 2 days after the infection, her mother and father are having a heated discussion about Zoe's future. Zoe was in college but came home to her mother. Carolyn's disagreement. Her father, Wade, appreciates their daughter being home, stating maybe she can join him in the blue-collar field. He also compliments Zoe's shooting ability. However, they are speaking to each other as if Zoe isn't at the table as well. Suddenly, someone breaks into the apartment through the front door. They instantly recognize them as an infected. The infected attacks her mother, Carolyn, mortally wounding her face before Wade is able to shoot the attacker. As Zoe and Wade attempt to treat her, within minutes Carolyn springs back to life, attacking Wade, leaving a deep scratch across his face. Before she's able to attack Zoe, Wade shoots his infected wife, killing her. Wade believes he is now going to turn, instructs Zoe of what must be done, an unknowingly unnecessary precaution. Without warning, the alarms in Millhaven sound. This is the beginning of Mora's rebellion. Bill advises the dangers of loud sounds. The entire facility will be swarming in no time. unless they can arm themselves. The doctor agrees and leads them to a nearby armory. Francis and Lewis also alert their guards of the impending doom. A bleeding soldier bursts into the hallway and quickly perishes. A witch follows through the door. The soldiers are prepared to shoot, but Lewis stops them, telling them to allow her to walk by and to keep quiet. They are initially skeptical, but after some convincing, they follow his instruction and she passes without incident. They release them from the cell and begin making their way towards the armory. The zombie horde is in full alert at the base. The exterior walls quickly get overrun with infected, leading to mass casualties. Zoe and Bill, under the direction of the doctor, arrive at the armory where they find Lewis, Francis, and the 2 cell guards. The group gets reacquainted and Francis introduces the guards as Jeff and Annie. They stock up on supplies and make an exit plan through the train yard. Jeff believes this is a suicide run, but Bill reassures him, stating the group legged it across the entire city of Philadelphia. A quarter-mile trip to the train yard should be a breeze. Zoe and Francis take a moment to catch up with each other, and Francis, with his usual remarks, makes a joke out of their dire situation. We then jump into Francis's past. 2 days after the infection, Francis was stopped by a police officer. He was caught stealing a television from a store. He tried to run but was caught and was scheduled to serve prison time. He was telling his friends in a bar about the details of his sentencing over a few beers, and how it is likely they will never be able to see him again. One of the girls, Sandra, pulls him into a bathroom for a proper farewell. During their makeout session, she vomits on him. He is initially taken aback by it, but she pulls him in once again. This time, she bites a chunk of his neck, causing him to flee back with the original group. One of the patrons, Duke, shoots the infected before she can pounce on Francis once again. Francis initially antagonizes Duke for killing the girl, but Duke confirms she is a zombie and how it is likely the government's doing, releasing a bioweapon for population control. After a moment, Francis becomes excited to the realization, if everyone is a zombie, there are no rules, and he would not have to serve his prison sentence. The new world is lawless, and they are free to do whatever they like. They head to the roof and take a few beers, guns, and a jukebox, spending the night executing over 1,000 zombies. We jump back to the present, where we find Mora and his loyalty squad fighting off a horde of infected. During the attack, Mora is wounded and loses his mask. His followers, being under the same ideology, believe he is now infected, or at least, at best, a carrier, effectively being left for dead. He appears to accept his fate, instructing them to shoot him if he turns. We jump back to the survivors, Annie, Jeff, and the doctor. Bill instructs the new group to follow his lead, and if they lag behind, they will be left behind. Zoe asks Bill why he plans to head south. He tells her that he will fill her in once they're on the train. She attempts to call his bluff on leaving behind the new survivors, but he insists. When she asks if he plans on leaving her, Lewis, or Francis, he denies it, stating he's looking after his own. On their way, they run into a heavily wounded Mora. He appears to be turning, seeing a mutated version of Zoe and Lewis as he uses the remainder of his strength to point his gun at them. Lewis attempts to negotiate with Mora to lower his weapon, and the doctor attempts to as well, jokingly putting the blame of the attack on Lewis. Mora buys this lie, asking which one of them is Lewis. Lewis jokingly says his name is Francis. Bill quickly intervenes, punching Mora and instructing everyone to run. Mora attempts to point his weapon again at Lewis, but is crushed by a tank. The doctor spots a helicopter leaving, advising maybe they could get it to pick them up. In the same instant, the tank picks up a car and hauls it at the helicopter, killing everyone aboard. During its destruction, a piece of debris pierces a gas tank on a nearby vehicle. Thinking quickly, Lewis drives the vehicle's leaking gas along the tank's path, eventually jumping out as it crashes into the tank. Bill lights the trail of gas on fire with a cigarette, leading to the car exploding and killing the tank. The group spots a holdout point along the south wall. Annie advises Zoe she and Jeff will head back and hold out with their squad. Zoe protests, but Annie persists as she knows they are not immune like she is. She then wishes them farewell. As they arrive on the train, Lewis and Francis are the first to board and debate on how to get it started. Bill pushes past them, quickly turning its engines on and getting it running at full speed. The doctor who was following did not make it. Zoe urges Bill to slow the train down, but it is too late. The doctor gets taken by the horde, and we flash to the south wall being overrun by infected. Bill and Zoe continue to argue. She believes there was something he could have done to save more people, but Bill is adamant that they must look after each other. She continues to pressure him to stop, but Bill ignores her. Our last look at the base is filled with dead bodies. During the train ride, Bill informs the group of his plan. They will get a boat and live in the Florida Keys, as he believes the infection may not have made it that far south. Worst case, the infected presence isn't as heavy down there. Francis has dreams of a paradise where he is rudely awoken by Zoe. She tries to question him on his opinion of the plan, but he ignores her and goes back to sleep. Zoe then directs her attention back to Bill, where they continue to argue about Bill's plan and choice to leave the soldiers and doctor. Bill assures her this is the only way they can survive and that the world has changed. They are to look after each other, and that it is impossible to save everyone. Zoe presses him on how cruel he can be to leave all those people, and also vents her frustration that she wants the world to go back to the way it was. Francis cuts them off, getting up and leaving, stating he'd rather be in a room with Lewis. We have a flashback of Bill's past. 2 days after the infection, Bill was in a veterans hospital to get surgery for a bum knee. During the surgery, after anesthesia had been administered, one of the doctors turns, attacking another doctor just as he was about to black out. He forces himself to fight the anesthesia, killing the first infected with his bare foot and running out of the room, chased by the doctor who was attacked. He finds a bone saw in a storage room and kills the second infected with it. Bill then leaves the hospital, dual-wielding a bone saw and a knife. He fights his way through the streets to his home, where he takes one final look at a Vietnam photo and puts on his old rags. We jump back to the present, and at this time, this is where the sacrifice campaign starts, but we will get a little more detail from the comic. The survivors, now in Radford, Georgia, are fighting their way along the coastline city. Frances and Zoe are still discussing the disagreement, explaining she cares deeply for Bill, seeing him as a father. She is furious that he would leave those people behind, leading her to believe she doesn't truly know Bill, possibly afraid he may do the same thing to her. Frances surprisingly backs up Bill, stating the original group he was with would not have lasted as long as they have with Bill. Bill may not always make the best decision, but he does it with his best intentions. It had always been to prioritize their group. They find a yacht and Lewis boards it. There is a small disagreement as Bill wants a sailboat due to it not needing gas, but the opportunity to ride a yacht is something Frances refuses to pass. As they are discussing this, Lewis is briefly attacked by something below the deck. He is pulled in, but fights his way out with an injured leg. He gets a good look at what is inside and instantly shuts the hatch, advising them this isn't their boat and to burn it. Bill helps Lewis off the boat and Francis asks Lewis what did he see. We then get a shot of the interior. I count at least 33 witches along with 2 dead cameramen. Who knows what was going on prior to the infection. They find another boat, much smaller but it sails. They investigate the interior and find it well stocked along with a dead individual. They realize it is likely whoever stocked the boat never came back. Due to the bridge that is on the water, they'd be unable to sail the boat out into the ocean. They come up with a plan to raise the bridge, come back and ride off into the ocean. They make their way to the bridge and power up the generators. This starts the gears and causes the bridge to begin to raise. However, the sound attracts every zombie in the area. As it is rising, one of the generators stops. They are not high enough for the zombies to not reach them, and as 4 tanks are charging at them, they are unsure what to do. Lewis believes he should attempt to get the generator started, saying his final farewell to everyone, but Bill instantly jumps to action. He attracts the horror to him as he fights to the generator. He manages to get it turned on and has a moment where he attempts to get back to the bridge. However, he is ambushed by a tank, knocking him through a door into a gear room. He takes a light of his final cigarette and takes his final stand as 3 tanks charge in at him. Zoe wants to go after Bill, but Francis stops them, stating if they go after him, his sacrifice would be in vain. They agree to wait on the bridge until the horde thins out and they will make their run for the boat. The final page of the comic shows the group in the islands. A bittersweet end for our first group. I do want to note, when you play this campaign in the game, anyone in the group can jump down to be sacrificed. However, when you play the passing, Bill is the only body that is found in the gear room. Now we arrive at the events of Left 4 Dead 2. Our new group of survivors, Coach, Ellis, Rochelle, and Nick, find themselves in the middle of the apocalypse in Georgia. The plot starts on the roof of the Vanna Hotel. The group just missed an evacuation helicopter. However, they noticed it is heading towards an evacuation center at Liberty Mall. They get their bearings, leave the hotel, and head toward the mall. On the way, they encounter various infected and new special infected that were not seen in Pennsylvania by the prior survivors. It is important to note Dead Center takes place a week after the No Mercy campaign, so it is likely the infected will continue to mutate into new special infected, as confirmed by the doctor in the sacrifice. On their way to the mall, they encounter a gun store whose owner has barricaded himself inside. The road to the mall is blocked and he makes them an offer.
just the people that helped me out. Come on upstairs when you're done. I'm guessing you four will be headed to the evacuation center at the mall. And I further guess you won't get there, as the road is blocked. I know, because I watched Cedar block it. So here's what I propose. I'm in need of some colas. You four run over there and procure some for me, and I'll clear the roadblock to the mall. Because I know that's where you're headed. And you ain't getting there without my help.
You want what?
Cola, ma'am. For my cola and nuts.
You people eat the strangest shit.
And how fortuitous that we do. Or else you would have nothing to bargain with, and no way to the mall.
After retrieving his cola, he blows through the barricade, and when they arrive at the mall, they are surprised to find no signs of survivors or CETA. They make their way through the mall, finding the CETA evacuation site riddled with bodies and deceased CETA staff. Becoming hopeless, they brainstorm an idea to escape the mall.
All right, so getting evac ain't happening. Anybody got an idea? Now's the time.
I think I got one. Let's go find Jimmy Gibbs' stock car. We get that thing gassed up, we will drive out of here.
Normally I wouldn't do this, but in these circumstances, I think Mr. Gibbs Jr. ain't gonna mind.
Wherever he is, Coach, he's proud of you. Okay, now this ain't the first time I try to peel out of a car show. Turns out they usually leave the gas tanks empty for such an eventuality. We gonna have to gas it up.
Haul ass and get gas!
With no other choice, the group finds gas cans scattered throughout the atrium, fill up Jimmy Gibbs' stock car, and ride out.
Hey there, can you lower the bridge?
If I could, I would. Can't. Get to the other side and we can lower it together.
Is the road even clear on the other side?
Yeah.
Then it's a date.
Hell yeah.
The survivors arrive to the bridge in Rayford, Georgia. They are greeted by Francis and ask him to lower the bridge. In order to cross, they must power on the generators on the other side. They likely arrive a few hours after the event of the sacrifice. However, the exact time frame isn't confirmed. This is also supported by Lewis still being injured during this campaign, as a result of his attack by the witches on the boat. They fight their way through an old museum in the streets of Rayford until they arrive. Here you will also find Bill's deceased body. They are instructed by the prior survivor group to restart the generators and are supported by Zoe and Francis, providing covering fire and occasionally throwing down supplies. Lewis is still on the bridge utilizing a minigun to provide support. Once the generator is powered on, the bridge is lowered, and they race back to their car and drive across the bridge.
The time my buddy Ellis stole a race car from the mall and drove it over some zombies?
No, I haven't heard that one.
The survivors arrive at a crowded freeway. It appears many people abandon their cars trying to escape Georgia. In the distance, they can see the lights from the amusement park Whispering Oaks. They eventually make their way to the amusement park, and on their way in, they see a helicopter flying overhead. An attempt to call out to the helicopter to get their attention. Here we are also introduced to a new kind of common infected, the clown zombies. Their big squeaky shoes attract zombies with them, making every encounter with them a small horde. They encounter the helicopter several more times, and this time Coach has an idea.
Okay, here's the plan. Y'all know the Midnight Riders? They're gonna save us. Because nobody, and I mean nobody, has a bigger pyrotechnic show than the Midnight Riders.
Let's find
Coach,
the stage.
that is about the stupidest idea I have ever agreed with.
These zombies better be...
They activate the Midnight Rider fireworks show and set up a hold. After some time, the helicopter comes back and takes them, presumably to safety. During the trip, the helicopter pilot becomes infected, resulting in Nick having to shoot him, likely due to the same reason the news pilot got infected after the No Mercy campaign. They land in a bayou, where the locals appear to have been dealing with the infected in their own special ways. This area also introduces the Mudmen zombies. They crawl on all fours, and when they attack the survivors, they blind them, similarly to the Boomer. They're typically not an issue when attacking on their own, but when they're in a horde, they can be slightly annoying to deal with, especially when you're in water. As they make their way through the bayou, the survivors find signs that there are people holding out in a nearby plantation. Once they arrive, the place is abandoned besides infected. They find a working radio and attempt to use it.
Who that there? Where you at?
Rochelle.
Hey now, where you at?
We're at a big old house with a gate.
Alright now, stay right where you is. Don't come free.
Sure we can wait. Pretty quiet here.
It takes some time for Virgil to get to them. Once he arrives, he blows open the gates, attracting more zombies as they make their way to his boat. While on the boat, Virgil plans to take them to an evacuation site in New Orleans. On their way to New Orleans, they run low on gas. They make a pit stop in the city of Milltown at a diesel stop. Originally intended to be a quick run across the street, they discover the gas station is out, and the next closest gas station is about 2 miles away. With no other choice, they begin in that direction. On the way, it begins to rain and it looks like a storm is brewing in the distance. They arrive at a sugar mill that is infected with witches. The high presence of witches is not exactly known, but Nick has a theory.
What's with all these witches?
Witches must really love sugar.
We are also now introduced to the construction worker infected, who are immune to pipe bombs due to them wearing ear protection, making them the opposite of the CETA infected in the Dead Center campaign, where they were resistant to fire. They finally arrive at the gas station, each filling up what I believe is a 9-gallon gas tank. They backtrack through the sugar mill in Milltown, but this time, a full hurricane has completely blanketed the town, resulting in severe flooding everywhere. They have to navigate climbing on industrial equipment and rooftops to get back to the burger tank. Due to the storm, they cannot signal Virgil from the shoreline. After some time and brainstorming, they come up with a new idea.
Let's go. Almost back to the boat.
What are we supposed to signal him with?
If we fire up the burger tank sign, Virgil might see it.
It's worth a shot. Into the burger tank.
The sign appears to attract the local horde, resulting in a temporary holdout until Virgil is able to make it back to them. Finally, the survivors arrive at a shoreline in New Orleans, bidding Virgil goodbye and heading toward the evacuation site. On their way, things look dire. Military jets are doing flybys, bombing the city and the bridge leading to the evacuation site. They also pass by several areas where groups of bodies appear to have been executed by someone, presumably the military. What's worse is the bodies don't appear to be infected, creating some tension towards the military. However, once they arrive at the bridge, they find a radio with an automated message.
Rescue 7, this is Papa Gator. Over.
Hey, those are soldiers. Let's let them know we're here. Hello?
Rescue 7. That's coming from the bridge. Bridge. Who is it?
My name's Nick. There's 4 of us on
You better be ready when
the
you get
west
there.
end of the bridge.
Oh, come on, man!
It's still real pretty.
Man, these people are comfortable in them zombies.
Hold some ass, y'all. That sounds like a spitter.
They lower the bridge and make a frantic run across, until they arrive at a military cargo helicopter that takes them to an undisclosed location. The aftermath of the Parish has never been explicitly stated. It is likely they were taken to a facility similar to Millhaven to be tested and possibly experimented on. And this concludes the history of Left 4 Dead. Another one of Valve's masterpieces in what I consider to be timeless art, especially considering what's come after it. And what are your thoughts? What is your favorite part of the story? And is there anything that I missed? Leave a comment down below. And I bid you goodbye.